This is Strange New Trek, a podcast about the life and times of Captain Christopher Pike. And now your hosts. So, what's the deal with the Gorn? Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they want with us? Why do they seem different every time we see them? And most of all, how did they get into space in the first place? I am your host, Jeremy Vilmer, and to discuss this topic and more with me this week is my first officer, Commander Dog, and our chief engineer, Chris Noonian Singh. What is up, Chris?
Not a whole lot, man. We plowing through some technical difficulties tonight.
Boy, howdy.
So if the audio sounds a little different, that's why.
Yeah, our apologies up front on that one. How little man himself has changed. Sure, technology's gotten more expensive, but, you know. Well, Chris, this week we are out of episodes of Strange New Worlds, and before we go back and finish Season 2 of Discovery, we're going to continue talking about some topics from Strange New Worlds. Do you want to give everybody an idea of what we're covering here?
Yeah, so, I don't know. It was about a week ago. I was listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History Addendum, and the guests he had on were Tom Holland, not Spider-Man, and Dominic Sambrook from the Rest is History podcast. And Tom was talking about the Third Reich and basically how the might makes right ideas that they had of running their society would likely not be very sustainable for them in the long run, even had they not lost the war, which immediately got me thinking about the Gorn.
Yeah, there are some questions that arise from what we've been shown with the Gorn.
So the first time we see the Gorn is in the TOS episode, The Arena, about man-sized. Super slow, but also very strong. Now, interestingly, the Gorn captain in Arena does speak English, but I think it's because the Metrons, the group responsible for putting Kirk against this Gorn on this planet, gave the Gorn some kind of voice duplicator equipment. But otherwise, the language is pretty much what we've seen in Strange New Worlds, like hisses and clicks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not too much different from what we've seen, obviously, except for the English-speaking stuff.
Right, and I think that was a universal translator or something similar to it. So the Gorn hisses into it and it comes out in English.
Yeah, that could be, but I think, like I said, the Metrons take credit for the Gorn being able to communicate with Kirk in this, right. I believe.
Well, and that's one of the things in this episode is in the episode Arena, once we understand what's going on, the Metrons were actually the enemy of the episode.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of give like a quick rundown on it. The Enterprise gets called to Cestus 3 by a fake emergency signal. And they get there and find out that it's been getting bombed out and that the unknown ships are hitting it. So the Gorn lay a trap and draw them in with that. And, appear to be just bombing this place into oblivion. And as Kirk and his crew leave the planet, then the Metrons throw Kirk and the Gorn captain back on there to duke it out. Now, besides them having a spaceship there, the Gorn, when he finds out there'll be stuff there to make weapons, what's he do? He makes an obsidian dagger. Kirk makes a gun, and the Gorn makes a stabby item out of a rock. And they like clubs Kirk with rocks and trees.
Yeah, so like right off the bat, even though you don't ever see a Gorn ship in this episode here or in TOS at all, I don't think.
No.
It already seems like the Gorn are not really spacefaring, even though the Gorn that Kirk is fighting is supposedly a captain. So, like you said, actually that's a good point that I didn't even think about when I was watching the Arena. The fact that Kirk sits there and makes a gun, where the Gorn is more interested in the stabby stuff, more rudimentary weaponry. I think that that just even more calls in the question of how in the heck are Gorn spacefaring in the first place.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, because I've wondered that about the Klingon before, too. You know, like, how did they get into space? I guess we can't rule out, like, somebody crashed a fleet of ships on their planet and they took them and, you know, worked backwards to a certain degree.
Yeah, but in the Klingon society, not everybody is part of the warrior class.
Yeah, they just do a real bad job of showing you that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. No, with the Gorn, I mean, like I said, you know, we see what seems to be different versions of them every time we see them. And
yeah, so the next time we see him is in the Enterprise episode in a Mirror Darkly Part 2, looking, in my opinion, even more ridiculous than the guy in the rubber suit.
It looked worse than a rubber suit, absolutely. The first thing I have to point out was that the Gorn on Arena had insectoid, like multi-eyeball. And the Gorn in a Mirror Darkly, now I realize it's a mirror universe, so there's a lot of things that could be different, but it had regular, like, yellow lizard eyes.
Yeah, and plus it's set up more to look like a velociraptor type creature.
Yeah.
At least I think you see a total of 2 or 3 of them in the Enterprise episode, because I did watch it. The first episode I've watched of Enterprise was not impressed at all. Maybe starting out on a Mirror episode was not the best way to see that show in its glory, quote unquote. But
Yeah, I have to say Enterprise never did a whole lot for me. Apparently Manny Koto took over for the last 2 seasons and kind of righted the ship. But, by then I'd quit watching.
yeah, so by the time we catch up with the Gorn and Enterprise, again, like Jeremy pointed out, this is a mirror universe, so things could have, just because they act a certain way in the mirror universe doesn't mean that it transfers over to the regular universe. So this stuff is with a pin, with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, they weren't acting any different from what we saw in both Arena and the episodes on Strange New Worlds. So I feel like Enterprise is kind of a blend of the two, because you still have that super aggressive Gorn chasing people down on the ship, but in other parts, there's also like this slave runner Gorn who seems to speak English somehow. I guess you could say it was part of the Universal Translator. It could be that the Federation had run across the Gorn well before Kirk did the first time.
Oh, sure.
Or even, I guess now, Pike and Co.
Well, and just kind of give a different idea there. So in Arena, they were attacking the people on Cestus 3 because for the Gorn, that had always been one of their colony worlds. And they come back and, like, everybody they left there's gone, and there's humans there. So they're like, oh, okay, I don't know what this is, but we're just going to bomb the bejesus out of you guys. Or I don't know if the Gorn worship bejesus, but, if they did. And in Amir Darkly, the Gorn we see there, God, this name they give him, Slar.
I mean, that kind of sounds like a Klingon name.
It does. It sounds like a generic villain of the week name. Like, that could have been a bad guy on Highlander. He worked for the.
I was thinking it'd been a bad guy on the Serene Squall. a crew member of the pirate.
that would have totally worked. So he works for the Thoin Assembly, working on the USS Defiant, which of course is a Constitution class ship that came from the Prime universe into the Mirror universe. And then he goes mano a mano with Captain Archer, and then Archer uses a gravity plate to stick him to the floor and stomp on him.
Oh yeah, that was interesting use of technology there. I mean, it was cool for sure, but
it's the first time we ever saw anything like that.
Yeah, as far as I know, the only time we ever saw anything like that.
Yeah. Now the next one, this was I almost forgot this, except that when I remembered it, I was like, oh yeah, because it kind of irritated me when I saw it. Discovery Season 1, Captain Lorca has a Gorn skeleton in a case in his ready room.
Yeah. I mean, although that doesn't necessarily mean he knew what it was. It could have been mistaken for something else. So I'm not super concerned about it showing up in there. Like, I really feel like that was just some set dressing for people to pick up on. You know what I mean?
It was a total Easter egg because
Yeah.
it looks exactly like the one from Arena.
It does.
Yeah.
So in all of these so far, at least more or less, the Gorn act similarly. A few differences in looks, and actually the Gorn in Enterprise seems a bit more aggressive
Yes.
than the Gorn that we see in Arena. And like you said, in the first season of Discovery, we see a Gorn, but it's a skeleton.
It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Gorn.
Not much we can infer yet.
Yeah.
So actually the next time we see the Gorn is in the Lower Decks episode Veritas.
Yes.
Now, this is tough for me. I love Lower Decks though.
Lower Decks is so good, but
it is, and it's supposed to be canon.
It's so Star Trek. I mean, it is so Star Trek in every way. Yet it's played for laughs. It makes it hard to go like, oh yeah, I can totally see this in the rest of the universe.
Yeah, because in this one, you see a Gorn wedding ceremony. You see them, more of the civilization side instead of the spacefaring side of them. But it's a little tough to take Lower Decks as serious as canon.
It's a fully serious canon piece, yeah.
It definitely is better than the last time they tried to do an animated series, or the first time they tried to do an animated series. But yeah, it's super hard to take it at face value as canon.
Yeah, I got to point out that the wedding ceremony, they are at Vasquez Rocks, but there's a Vol-style dragon head carved into them. And it looks like, I don't know, what are they, like Gorn Presbyterian? I mean, it looks like an Earth wedding.
Interestingly enough, though, the Gorn in the Lower Decks have that same insect type eyes that the Gorn in the Arena has, which is a departure from the Gorn in Enterprise. Yeah, I mean, it's even hard to take Enterprise into this conversation because they're in a mirror universe, so there could be a lot of things different about them from their Prime counterparts. But here in Lower Decks, this is the Prime timeline they're in right now.
Yep. Poor Rutherford.
Yeah, right.
I've had my memory dip in and out like that on a really rough night before, so I definitely commiserate with the poor fellow. Production-wise, the next time we see him, even though this would be chronologically the first time, would be the best Star Trek series ever, Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, somebody should watch that and do a podcast about it.
Somebody really should, yeah. You can find us on the internet wherever you find your podcasts. Just look for Strange New Trek. We get a lot of references in here.
Yeah, there's several. There's at least 2 episodes that deal directly with the Gorn.
Mm-hmm. Plus La'an's history, where they just kind of like talk about it obtusely,
So this is really where a large departure comes. I mean, again, we saw him in Enterprise as a super aggressive foe, but it's hard to take that at face value because they were in the mirror world. But in Strange New Worlds, the Gorn come out of their host, alien style, and what was it, 3 or 4, sets of 3 and 4, and the stronger ones immediately attack the weaker ones in the bunch.
Yeah, now I think Tasmanian devils are one of those like super aggressive animals. That's actually a thing that happens in nature.
Well, that just further proves my point. I don't see Tasmanian devils rolling around spaceships.
No, not yet. Give them 100,000 years, we'll see, But
yeah, Strange New Worlds is what really put this into perspective for me. And then again, that podcast that I was listening to. But they are obviously a might makes right kind of civilization, at least what we've seen.
At least right at the beginning.
Yeah. Now, to me, the Gorn that we see in the Arena is a fully grown, mature Gorn. Super slow. He might be a bit stronger, but super slow. In my mind, the younger, faster, more agile ones would take those guys out, even if they had to do it in a pack, because the newborn Gorns, man, they waste no time into just tearing up everything around them.
Well, now, so I've got a couple things. Now, you're going to have to give me room for headcanon here, because none of this is backed up by anything, right? I was first wondering, now, Lon says that they have breeding planets, basically, where they hatch their young and where they feed them humans, and the young just kind of wander around. I wonder if they leave their young there for an extended period of time until they hit like an age that is like, I don't know, kind of like where a human baby had hit like 3, 4, 5, where they can actually start understanding things, and then go pick them up. You know, maybe they're completely animalistic until they hit a certain age. And then they're civilizable, kind of, you know, like human children. Like you couldn't take a newborn and have them drive a Ferrari. You know?
Yeah, because I think at one point Lon points out that to keep their civilization going, they drop their hosts off at other planets so they can do their thing there and then come back for them later. That seems like something Lon said. I'm not 100% on that, but so that may get around my idea that the young ones would hunt the older ones in packs, kind of like velociraptors.
Yeah. Well, because, you know, my thinking is that, you know, that when they're first hatched, by instinct alone, they just kill until there's, you know, and I hate this concept because it turns out to be BS, but the alpha kills all the other ones and then it's ready to go on. But I don't think maybe by the time that they're brought into society and, you know, kind of like educated or whatever the Gorn do with their young at this point, I don't think by that point they're probably not running around pulling the Klingon promotion on everybody.
You know, I could have just talked myself out of my own theory here.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's good to do sometimes, you know.
Because my whole contention was that given how we see them act in Strange Worlds, it was super unlikely that they would get advanced enough to space travel.
Yeah.
Just because of how savage their young are. But if we're saying that they know that about their young and then drop them off at some other planet, wait for them to get a little bit older and wiser and more mature, I guess, come back and pick them up once all that naked aggression is out of their system. Yeah, maybe.
That's one way, yeah.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. You know, another thing I was thinking at some point is, what if what we see as the Gorn aren't the Gorn, but they're a bunch of hatchlings that have grown up who were born out of the Gorn, so they look like the Gorn and everybody thinks they're the Gorn, but they're really some other species.
Or they're just the Gorn that haven't been picked up by their parents' Gorn yet.
Yeah, they're the Tarzan and Mowgli of the Gorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even with the colonization, yeah, you still got it.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, one of the things I noticed in the earlier episode, with the first time they actually come into conflict with the Gorn in this show, the Gorn are setting traps and ambushing the bejesus out of them left and right. You know, they're doing the thing where, oh, we can't beam out of the ship, so you're going to have to extend your boarding elevator. And then that's when the Gorn hit them, is when the two ships are connected and the shields are down. And the Gorn are being clever in this one, just like they were in Arena. Now, later when we get to the episode where they go after the Peregrine, it is literally just a remake of the movie Aliens.
Yeah, All Those Who Wander.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is just like a literal remake of Aliens. They're bursting out of people and running them down and killing them. Also, if that's what the Gorn are like full time, that makes them more dangerous than the Borg.
Yeah, but it also prevents them from being a spacefaring race, I feel like. Because I was going to say that's not sustainable, but if they get around that sustainability by dropping their drop in hosts at another planet for them to, like I said, get all that naked aggression out of their system, and then the Gorn come back and pick them up later. I mean, that would do it. I guess that would prevent the young Gorn from going after the older, slower ones.
I mean, that's what I would think. Now, I always hate this idea where we equate an alien species to something from Earth, like, oh, it's, they're a reptile, because I doubt very much that's what's going to happen. But if you do go ahead and say that a Gorn is like a crocodilian, reptilian kind of creature, I don't believe that those are real tight mother-baby bonds. They literally, like, they hatch them and then they move on, I don't think there's like a real... Because they don't breastfeed, they don't really take care of them once they're up and born, I don't think. So, it wouldn't be much of a difference for a Gorn just to like, hey, we're just going to throw you on the egg sac planet and we'll be back in a while.
Man, I guess I just talked myself out of my own theory. The whole point of this episode.
That's okay.
Yeah, the whole reason I wanted to do this was because I wanted to at least show, given everything that we've seen, that there's no possible way the Gorn could be a spacefaring race. But
well, what we can do is I asked this on Twitter and got a couple responses.
Oh, yeah?
You want to talk about what some other people had to say, maybe?
Sure.
Let me see. This one is from Rusted Gear Art, who basically responded with, I don't see a race that culls failure expanding past their own planet. Failure is a valuable lesson. So agreeing with your first premise.
Yeah. I mean, we even see that in the first time we run across them in Strange New Worlds, where that was the submarine type episode, Memento Mori, I think it was. And yeah, the Enterprise transmitted out that one of the Gorn ships got infiltrated by the humans, and the other two Gorn ships just blasted it right out of the sky immediately.
Now, can I give my rebuttal to that argument?
Sure.
What's that do to the Romulans who culled failure in the last episode of the season?
I mean, that's true. Mm-hmm. But, we could be seeing a more aggressive splinter from the main Romulan faction.
There's a lot of room for interpretation,
Yeah.
The next response I have here is from @the_Gorn Captain. Oh, okay. So,
well, he's a bit biased. So
I was going to say this guy's got no viewpoint coming right in. And basically, this was a response to, does anybody have anything to say or ask or whatever about the Gorn in Strange New Worlds? The Gorn Captain says nothing good, not a thing. But what do I know about it? I'm not some uninformed writer who couldn't care less about the legacy of one of Trek's most iconic aliens. Hiss, click, hiss. I think he turned off the translator.
I mean, again, though, the Gorn were featured in one episode until Enterprise.
Yeah.
And even then, they were done in the mirror universe. So I've heard you make this argument before. Basically, like this whole idea of the Gorn being like this overshadowing thing and all of Trek is just not true.
Yeah, they're not super well established. Now, I'll say they're iconic. When I was a little kid, you asked me about a Star Trek enemy, I always thought of the Gorn. But it was because of, cool lizard man fighting Captain Kirk in the desert looks cool, Yeah, their look is iconic. I would give it that. But they weren't like a super well-developed cornerstone of Star Trek. People keep bringing it up like they were, but they just weren't. Yeah,
again, we got the Gorn in Arena, and then didn't see him again until in A Mirror Darkly Part 2. Yeah. And that was a mirror universe. And then the next time we see him, if you want to consider it canon or not, Lower Decks, and then in Strange New Worlds, they did get mentioned in a later season of Discovery as creating some kind of wormhole. But yeah, so you can count on almost one hand how many times they've really come up. Even.
Yeah, they're just not a well developed or well represented race within the stories of Trek that we've gotten. Let's see here. This one is from @Chintzy Beatnik, who says, I doubt we've seen the last of them in S&W, and I can't wait to see what they come up with the next time they appear. Yeah, me either. I'm interested in where this is going, even though I'm kind of trepidatious.
Yeah, I would like to see them show the fully mature Gorn, and hopefully it's similar to. Obviously, I would like to see a guy in a rubber suit, but that's just my own personal preference. But yeah, it would be nice to see a fully mature Gorn that we could compare and contrast to what we've seen thus far in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
Because again, if they let their young out on their home planet, I agree with the first response you read. There's no chance they get off the planet acting like that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's their behavior all the way through, then yeah, that's not going to work. Now, the JJ verse, they actually designed for Star Trek 2009 the Gorn and the Telosians because they were going to be in Rura Pente with Nero. And even though they designed them, and I believe they filmed some of them, they did not show it in the movie, so it doesn't count. And then there was a Star Trek video game based in the JJ verse where the Gorn are the primary enemy, and there's like a bunch of different species of Gorn, and they all act like brutal psychopaths.
Yeah, like I just don't see how an entire civilization made up of folks like that could get to space.
Yeah.
Now, I read some of your responses that you are going to talk about, and there is one that maybe I can give the benefit of the doubt to. Mm-hmm. That was the one where at Vix Winters was saying, he says, my theory, and I hope I'm right, is that the spacefaring tech is from an earlier epoch of Gorn civilization. They had their own eugenics wars, making them a foil to La'an, bred for ferocity and individual power, and the modern Gorn are the eugenicist winners.
Oh, you know what? I did read that, but I had forgotten about it, and that is an interesting idea if... Yeah. So the earlier version of the Gorn is what set all this into motion, as far as like dropping their young, already embedded hosts off in another planet, bred for ferocity. So that accounts for why, as soon as they pop out, like the weakest ones getting killed immediately, and then they come back by later and pick them up. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to see a fully mature Gorn in Strange New Worlds to see what they do with it. Actually, I just looked at a picture of that JJ verse version. Mm-hmm. That thing looks like an orc. Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, I didn't care for the design. I just thought it was interesting that they had them planned,
Yeah, he's got some head ridges. It's almost reminiscent of the Next Generation Klingons to me. Obviously, it's exposed bone, not bone underneath the skin, and he's got 3 and not just like one prominent one. But yeah, the dude looks like a reptilian orc.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Going back to the OP comments, until we know how to deal with them. I agree, because there would be no way to stop their spread if that's how they all breed. I mean, literally, you just drop a handful of teenagers on a planet and everybody will be hatching Gorn by tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I could get with the program and say that, an earlier version of them kind of set all this up, and this is the conclusion of all that planning and eugenics wars and stuff like that. If, in fact, that happened.
Yeah, actually, Vix Winters actually had a follow-up to that. After the Gorn eugenicists won, the cooperation and pro-social traits necessary for tech and development go away. I bet they have a brutal, volatile dictatorship or vicious factions. They've become apex predators at the cost of society, technical and social stagnation. That would make sense.
Okay, so then, I'm at least partially... I feel like I'm at least partially vindicated that this current iteration, it would be a problem for them to advance technology and stuff like that. Vix is describing basically what I described at the front, like the might makes right stuff. Like it's not sustainable, and you're going to sustain massive stagnation in technology, and like Vix here says, in the social aspect of everything. So, yeah.
So, according to Memory Alpha, their interstellar government is known as the Gorn hegemony. And a hegemony is where one group or country within a league of others There's like one that is supreme over the others that kind of enforces their culture, language, and stuff on everybody underneath them.
Yeah, you know what? I should have watched this episode of Enterprise too, because what you're talking about comes from Enterprise, the episode Bound. I definitely should have watched that one, because that at least talks a little bit about him here in a non-mirror universe way. So I guess I should have watched that one too, but I totally forgot about that one. But yeah, so or maybe, I remember you bringing up something about this in one of the episodes where they talk about the Gorn in Strangely Worlds, whether that's Memento Mori or Those Who Wander. Yeah, I remember you making a similar statement. I'm pretty sure I left it in and didn't cut it out, but you basically said that maybe we're not seeing the true Gorn right now. So it could be this hegemony has like the super smart arena Gorn ruling over the super aggressive, smaller Gorn. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be anything. I mean, quite honestly, there could be different races. I mean, completely different, unrelated reptilian-like races that have formed a government together. There could be something more like a structural society, like ants or bees have, where there's drones and where there's literally biological differences between this kind of worker and that. So it's really hard to say what it comes down to. I'm interested in seeing it. The spitting for reproduction still kind of bothers me a little bit, though.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, just because it makes them a deadlier threat than the Borg. The Borg at least have to nab you, fill you up with nanites, put you in a machine, cut out your eyeball, change your hand. Literally, these guys take one enemy, spit on them, and make 3 babies.
Yeah.
You drop a handful of like elite soldiers into a country that has a heavy population. Everybody's Gorn by morning.
Oh yeah. That it would be real easy to take over a planet with these guys.
Yeah.
Supposing that the folks that they were trying to subdue had never been in contact with them before and weren't super technically advanced.
Yeah. They were all hammer levels of bravery either.
Yeah.
I got one. All right, I'm jumping. See y'all later. I'll snuff this out right now.
Yeah.
I was going to also bring up, back in the 70s when Star Trek wasn't worth a whole lot, before the talk of a new TV series or a movie series had started, a couple gaming companies had acquired the rights through Franz Joseph, who created the technical manual, because he had printed the technical manual with his own copyright. So he licensed out his stuff from that book to other people to make war games and role-playing games and that sort of thing. And according to the Starfleet universe, the Gorn Confederation was the government, and it was a union of 3 sentient races from neighboring star systems. They were genetically almost identical despite coming from different planets, suggesting that they could have had a common ancestor.
Yeah.
So that was their version of the governing body for them as well. It was a confederation of 3 different races.
Yeah, and again, I guess you take the Gorn we saw in Arena, who's obviously more technologically advanced than the Gorn we see in Strangely Worlds, and plus knowing how they react to things, it wouldn't be hard for the Arena-type Gorns to overtake the Strangely World Gorns. So it could be, man.
Yeah, it could very well be, because we have seen enough to know that at least some branch of the Gorn people who are in the military are very clever.
Yeah, because in Memento Mori, we never actually put eyeballs on them. We just saw their ships.
Yeah.
So it could have been something totally different from what we saw in All Those Who Wander.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I still see where you're coming from. It's like hard to look at some of the things we saw the Gorn doing in Strange New Worlds and go like, oh yeah, I can totally see that they're technologically advanced,
Well, in one episode, fine, because you never actually see how they act individually, but definitely in that All Those Who Wander, it is a problem if they all act like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which is what also made me go back and look at, well, so Kirk builds a cannon and dude just builds a pointy stick out of obsidian.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in the arena, the Gorn goes for a stabby thing, and Kirk goes for a pew-pew.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you would think that a technologically advanced civilization dude would have thought maybe like, oh, I'll put a Wile E. Coyote snare trap, and then, when he steps in it, I'll spring out of the bush, and, some kind of thing.
Well, I mean, by the time he hears Kirk talking about using, what did he say, using the sulfur for gunpowder, I think it would have been, too late for him. But just because Kirk made a gun doesn't mean the Gorn couldn't have given another set of materials, I guess I'm saying.
And that Gorn, he moves so slow that he just may not have had time to put everything together and consider what was available to him. He just found the obsidian and went, okay, I'll make a stabby out of it.
Yeah, man. So that kind of deflates my whole theory, which, I mean, I guess I don't mind. But that was kind of the point of this whole episode.
Well, you know what?
But now
we kind of did that with the Sombra class a week or two back too.
Yeah, that's true.
Where I was like, I came in and I'm like, that's stupid. And then you started explaining to me how nuclear ships and stuff work. And I'm like, oh, wait. So there is a way that could work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to have your own theories tested sometimes. Just, may not be great to have them recorded. Oh, so any other notes or picks you want to knit or whatever this week?
No, I don't think so, man.
Yeah, I kind of just want to see where they're headed here. I want to see what they're going to do with them.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in all of that.
Yeah. So I know we don't have a new episode next week, but are there any scripts that had a good story or anything you had lying around?
Absolutely. The action begins in a heavily monitored forest. A Gorn and a human are betrothed, but the human believes that the Gorn hates her. Eventually, she chooses duty over love. So, wow, the Gorn, they're just out there marrying humans.
Yeah.
And they're so, the language barrier is so steep that the wife didn't even know.
We do know they like to impregnate humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Little does she know that when the babies are born, that's it for her.
Yeah. Well, that's probably that lack of communication. That universal translator was not great.
Nope.
Yeah.
She's only going to choose duty over love until them kids are born, and then
well, then she ain't got much of a choice. All right. So if you guys out there have any questions, comments, or theories you want to run by us, hit up our website at strangenewtrekshow.com or follow the links in the show notes for this episode in your podcast app of choice. Please rate and review / like and subscribe wherever you find us, wherever you listen to us or watch our YouTube shows or anything like that. It's a small step for you, but a giant step for the show. I want to give a special thank you to Miguel Esparza for the Strange New Trek theme, and to Will Harding for all his hard work over in the YouTube area. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to set your phasers to stun, and join us next time when we're on to the next planet of the week.